The first time I stepped into the skin library, the air clung to me like a second skin, thick with the scent of aged leather and something darker, something organic, as if the very walls had absorbed the sweat and terror of centuries. The narrow corridors of the Prague archive twisting like veins beneath the dim glow of gas lamps that flickered as though breathing, their light pooling in uneasy puddles on the warped wooden floors. My footsteps muffled by the weight of silence that wasn't quite silence. No, it was a whisper, a collective sigh from the shelves, the books themselves rustling as if shifting in their sleep. And I told myself it was just the draft, just the old building settling. But then I saw it, nestled in a glass case at the heart of the library, its cover a mottled, fleshy brown, stretched taut over what could only be human binding, the Codex Carnus, its title etched in what looked like dried blood, the letters raised and uneven, as though the skin had resisted the carving. And the librarian, a gaunt man with eyes like polished obsidian, noticed my gaze and smiled, a slow, deliberate thing that didn't reach his eyes, his fingers, long and tapered, too precise, brushing the glass as he said, "A rare treasure, one that chooses its readers." And I laughed, because what else do you do when faced with the absurd? But then he opened the case, and the smell hit me, not rot but something alive, a coppery tang beneath the leather, and when I reached out, against my better judgment, the cover moved under my touch, warm and yielding, a shudder passing through it like a muscle flexing, and I recoiled, my heart hammering, the librarian's smile widening as he murmured, "It likes you." And that night, in the cramped hotel room that suddenly felt too large, too empty, I woke to a burning sensation on my forearm, the skin there raised and angry, words forming as though carved by an invisible blade. He will drown in the dark, choking on his own breath as the walls close in, and I scrambled to the bathroom, scrubbing at the letters until my skin bled. But they only darkened, the text now a part of me, a prophecy etched in flesh, and by morning, the librarian was waiting outside my door, his coat damp with rain, his voice a razor's edge as he said, "You've been chosen." And I followed him back to the library, because what else could I do, the words on my arm throbbing with every step, the shelves now feeling like ribs, the library a living thing, swallowing me whole. And when he opened the codex this time, I heard it, a sound like a gasp, a wet, strangled cry coming from the pages as they turned, the vellum too thick, too wrong, its surface puckered with pores, the text written in veins that branched like capillaries, and the librarian's voice dropped to a whisper as he told me of the surgeon, his ancestor, a man who believed the soul resided in the skin, who stitched his victims into books to preserve their screams, their final moments, their essence. And as he spoke, my fingers brushed a page, and it shrieked, a sound that wasn't sound but vibration, a scream trapped in the fibers, and I stumbled back, my vision swimming, the librarian's hand suddenly on my shoulders, his breath in my ear. "You're already in it, you know. The book knows how you die." And I ran through the labyrinth of shelves, past the eyes of 100 leather-bound tomes that seemed to watch me, the walls narrowing, the air thickening, until I found myself in the detective's office, a man with hollow cheeks and ink-stained fingers who listened to my ravings with a grimace, his own sleeves rolled up to reveal words snaking up his wrists. He will open the book and see himself, and he agreed to help, because he had no choice, because the library had its hooks in him too. And together we unraveled the surgeon's history, the graveyard of missing persons, the librarian's ledger filled with names that matched the vanished, the dates they'd last been seen, the dates they'd become pages. And when we returned, the library was waiting, the codex laid bare on a pedestal, the librarian nowhere to be seen, the detective's hands shaking as he reached for it, his voice cracking as he read the first line. The detective will open the book and see his own skin staring back, and then he screamed because the page was his, the texture familiar, the birthmark near the edge unmistakable, and the book pulsed in his hands, the spine splitting open with a sound like tearing flesh, the librarian emerging from the shadows, a scalpel glinting in the low light, his smile now a rictus of triumph as he whispered, "Every library needs new acquisitions." And the last thing I saw before the darkness took me was the detective's face, his mouth open in a silent scream, his skin peeling away in ribbons, the pages of the codex fluttering hungrily, And now, as I write this, the words burning into my own skin with every passing second, I can feel it. The book's warmth, its hunger, and I know, with a certainty that chills my bones, that the next scream will be mine. The words keep spreading, crawling up my arms like spiders made of ink, each letter a searing brand as my skin betrays me. The library's shadows stretching longer, breathing deeper, the gas lamps now flickering in time with my pulse as I stagger backward, the detective's final scream still echoing in the hollows of my skull, his face melting into the codex's hungry pages, his skin now parchment, his terror now text. And the librarian steps closer, his fingers flexing around the scalpel, its edge catching the dim light in a way that makes my stomach twist, his voice a serpent's hiss as he murmurs, "You've read it, you've touched it, and now it's reading you." And I want to run, but my legs won't obey, the floor itself sticky beneath my shoes, the wood groaning as if the library is digesting me already, the air thick with the scent of old blood and something sweetly rotten, like fruit left to spoil in a sealed room. And the codex lies open before me, its pages fluttering without wind, the words rearranging themselves into my story, my fate, the sentence on my arm now complete. He will become the next chapter, his skin the binding, his screams the ink. And I try to scream, but my throat is closing, the librarian's hands on my shoulders, his touch cold and surgical, his breath against my ear as he whispers, "Don't struggle. It only hurts more if you struggle." And then the scalpel kisses my wrist, a line of fire racing up my arm, my vision swimming as the pain blossoms, the codex trembling in anticipation, its pages rustling like hungry mouths, and I watch, helpless, as my skin peels back in ribbons, the librarian humming as he works, his fingers deft as a bookbinder's, my flesh unspooling into vellum, my blood staining the margins, my voice joining the chorus of screams trapped within the book, each page a face, each sentence a last breath, and as the darkness swallows me whole, I realize the truth. I was never the investigator, never the hunter, only another fool who thought he could outrun the story. But the story was always waiting, always writing itself, and now, as my vision fades to black, I feel the final words etching themselves into what's left of me. The last line of my chapter, the librarian's voice the last thing I hear. Welcome to the collection. I am still screaming, but the sound is no longer mine. It is part of the book now, woven into the fibers of its cursed pages. My voice just another thread in the tapestry of agony that makes up the codex carnus. My skin stretched taut over its spine. My final moments etched in ink that still burns, still moves, as if the words themselves are alive, squirming like maggots beneath the surface, and I can feel the others here with me. The ones who came before, their whispers slithering through the vellum, their terror a constant vibration beneath the fingertips of every new reader who dares to open the book, their hands trembling as they trace the lines of our suffering, unaware that we are aware, that we feel every touch, every horrified gasp, every frantic heartbeat as they realize what they're holding. And the librarian is still out there, his footsteps echoing through the hollow halls of the skin library, his scalpel glinting as he selects his next guest, his next donation, his lips curling into that same knowing smile as he murmurs, "It's not just a book, it's an archive of souls." And I want to warn them, to scream until my voice shatters the glass cases and brings the whole cursed place crumbling down. But the codex holds me tight, its grip unyielding, its hunger endless. And I know now that this is my eternity, my skin a prison, my screams a story, my fate a sentence written long before I ever set foot in Prague, before I ever heard the whispers of the skin library, before I ever felt the warmth of the codex's flesh-bound cover. And as another victim's fingers brush the page, their eyes widening in dawning horror, I pour my remaining will into the ink, into the words that now rise to meet them, the letters shifting, writhing, forming a new prophecy, a new death. And somewhere in the darkness, the librarian laughs, soft and satisfied, as the cycle begins again. The horror deepens as new readers come, their trembling fingers tracing my flayed skin now stretched taut across these unholy pages, each touch sending fresh waves of phantom pain through what remains of my consciousness, their gasps as they recognize human features preserved in the vellum. An eyelid here, the curve of a lip there, the faint impression of a screaming mouth pressed forever into the fiber of my page, only feeding the Codex's malignant hunger, their shock and revulsion somehow, nourishing this abomination, and I feel the librarian's presence more than see it, his shadow falling across each new victim as they read their doom in my screaming text, his breath quickening with perverse excitement as their fingers begin twitching uncontrollably, their skin flushing red where the first words of their own death sentences are already rising to the surface in angry welts, the transfer beginning anew. While deep in the marrow of my being I sense the other trapped souls stirring. In sympathetic agony, our collective torment resonating through the Codex's grisly pages like a church bell's mournful toll. Each new addition to this blasphemous library stretching the limits of suffering until I can almost perceive the surgeon's original madness. His warped belief that this eternal preservation constituted some twisted form of mercy, that by binding us in this cursed tome, he was granting us immortality. And the cruelest realization of all dawns as I feel my consciousness beginning to fray at the edges, not fading but spreading, thinning like ink bleeding through parchment, my identity dissolving into the chorus of screams that form the Codex's true voice, until I can no longer remember which screams are mine and which belong to the centuries of victims before me. Our suffering merged into one endless, wordless wail that echoes through the library's haunted halls whenever some poor fool turns our pages. The librarian's footsteps drawing nearer with each passing hour, his collection nearly complete, his life's work approaching some terrible culmination that even we, the damned, cannot fathom. Our terror now the very mortar that holds these accursed walls together. The passage of time becomes meaningless in this leather-bound purgatory, where every scream is preserved in perfect clarity, and every moment of dying stretches into eternity. My consciousness now woven so completely into the Codex's cursed fibers that I can feel each new victim's approach before they even enter the library, their footfalls sending tremors through the shelves like prey stumbling into a spider's web, their frightened breaths making the pages flutter in anticipation. And today's visitor is different somehow. I sense it in the way the words on my page darken and swell, in how the surgeon's descendant lingers near the entrance with uncharacteristic hesitation, his usual predatory confidence replaced by something resembling fear. And when the newcomer finally touches the glass case containing us, the shock of recognition nearly unmakes what little remains of my soul, because this one bears the librarian's own features, his mirror image down to the slight crook in the nose, but younger, softer, and the terrible truth crashes over me. He has brought his heir, his apprentice, the next curator of this abattoir masquerading as a library, and as the old librarian's gnarled fingers pry open the case with ritual solemnity, I feel the Codex itself stirring to wakefulness, our collective screams rising to a crescendo that only we can hear, the very air vibrating with centuries of pent-up agony. And when the young man's fingers first brush my page, the contact sends such a jolt of understanding through me that for a moment I regain something like individuality. I see his entire life unspooling in the ink, every cruelty and kindness that led him to this moment, and most horrifying of all, I see the hesitation in his touch, the moral revulsion his ancestor worked so hard to breed out of their bloodline. And in this instant of clarity, I do the only thing left to me. I twist the words, warp the prophecy, make my page scream louder than all the others combined until the young man staggers back in horror, his eyes wide with realization rather than fear. And for the first time since my skin was flayed and stitched into this nightmare, I feel something like hope flicker in the darkness as he turns to his ancestor with dawning horror and whispers the words that might finally break the cycle. "Father, what have you done?" The air in the library curdles with tension as the young man's question hangs between them, his trembling hands still tingling with the psychic residue of our torment, his father's face twisting into a rictus of fury and something deeper. Fear, the first true fear I've ever sensed from the keeper of this abattoir of souls, and the Codex trembles in response, its pages rippling as if caught in a sudden wind. Our collective anticipation a living thing as the elder librarian's voice drops to a venomous whisper. "What I was born to do, what you will continue." But the boy, no, the young man, his eyes now alight with horrified understanding, takes another step back, shaking his head, his fingers absently rubbing at his palm where my page's warning has already begun rising to the surface of his skin in angry red welts. The words not his death sentence but ours, our desperate plea finally heard after centuries of screaming into the void, and the elder librarian moves with sudden, terrifying speed, his scalpel flashing as he lunges for his heir. But the boy is quicker, his revulsion granting him strength as he grabs a heavy brass candlestick and brings it down on his father's wrist with a sickening crunch, the scalpel clattering to the floor beside the open codex. And in that moment of chaos, I feel it, the fragile seam of reality straining where the surgeon's ancient magic binds us, the spell momentarily weakened by the violence between blood relatives, and with every ounce of will left to us, we push, we scream, we tear at the metaphysical stitches holding our souls to these flayed pages, and the codex erupts in a geyser of ink and blood and unearthly light, the pages thrashing like dying animals as our combined anguish finally finds release, the library itself seeming to howl around us as centuries of trapped souls begin breaking free, the very shelves buckling under the weight of our collective liberation, and as my consciousness finally unravels from the vellum that was once my skin, I see the young man standing transfixed in the maelstrom, his arms outstretched not in fear, but in something like benediction, his lips moving in words I can no longer hear as the library collapses around him. And in my last moment of coherence before dissipating into whatever comes after this nightmare, I realize with staggering clarity that the words rising on his flesh weren't a death sentence at all. They were a prophecy of liberation, the final line of the Codex's curse finally fulfilled. The sun shall become the flame that burns the bindings. The conflagration of our collective release consumes the library in a whirlwind of screaming leather and burning parchment. Centuries of damned souls finally finding voice as the flames lick up the ancient bookshelves in hungry orange tongues. The air thick with the sickly sweet stench of burning flesh as the codex's pages blacken and curl, each blistering bubble in the vellum releasing a trapped wail that joins the chorus of our liberation. And through the smoke and chaos I see the young librarian, no longer a boy but not yet a man, standing transfixed at the heart of the inferno, his arms outstretched as our freed essences swirl around him in a maelstrom of long-denied justice, his eyes wide with the terrible beauty of this destruction, tears carving clean streaks down his soot-blackened face as he whispers apologies to ghosts he can suddenly hear clearly, while his ancestor crawls toward the disintegrating codex with broken fingers, his life's work crumbling to ash before his eyes, his mouth stretched in a silent scream of denial as the flames finally claim him too, his flesh bubbling like the covers of the damned books he so cherished. And in these final moments before my consciousness dissolves completely, I feel the other souls around me, some surging upward toward some unfathomable peace, others clinging desperately to the mortal realm they were torn from, a few even turning back toward the flames with vengeance in their spectral hearts. And I make my choice, letting go at last, the last of my identity unraveling like the burning threads of the codex's spine, the young librarian's final act of defiance having broken the cycle that held us all prisoner, his inherited curse transformed into an unexpected blessing, the flames purging the library of its horrors, but leaving its structure strangely intact. The stone walls standing sentinel over the ashes as dawn's first light filters through the smoke-stained windows, revealing row upon row of empty shelves waiting to be filled with new stories, better stories, while outside in the Prague morning, unbeknownst to the gathering crowd of onlookers, a single page of unburned vellum drifts down onto the cobblestones, its surface blank except for 3 words that glimmer faintly before fading completely. It is done. The drifting ash of the library's destruction swirls in the morning air like spectral remnants of our suffering, settling upon the cobblestones with a silence that feels sacred after centuries of screams. And though my consciousness should have unraveled completely, some final, stubborn fragment of me lingers, tethered not by pain or curse, but by something far stranger, a quiet curiosity to witness what comes after the end, watching as the young librarian stumbles from the smoldering ruins, his clothes singed, his hands blistered from where he tried in vain to salvage anything from the flames, his face hollow with the weight of what he's done and what he's undone, the crowd murmuring around him in a mix of awe and suspicion, their voices overlapping in questions he doesn't answer, their fingers pointing at the smoke still coiling from the library's skeletal remains. And then a shift, a ripple in the air like the moment before a storm breaks, as the first whisper of a new story stirs. In the ashes, not the hungry, possessive whisper of the codex, but something softer, tentative, the sound of a page turning rather than screaming, and the young man's head lifts as if he hears it too, his red-rimmed eyes scanning the ruins with something like recognition, like understanding, and in that moment I realized the truth. The library was never the prison, the books never the captors. It was the stories themselves that were trapped, warped by the surgeon's cruelty, and now, freed from his lineage's perversion, they breathe again, faint but alive, waiting for new hands to hold them, new voices to tell them. And as the last wisp of my awareness finally dissolves, I see the young man step forward, not away from the ruins but toward them, his shadow, stretching long in the dawn light, his fingers brushing the soot-stained doorframe with reverence rather than fear. And I know, with the last certainty I'll ever possess, that the story isn't ending here. It's only just begun. The young librarian's hands, still trembling from the fire's heat, press against the blackened doorframe as if listening for a heartbeat within the ruins. And the moment his skin touches the scorched wood, something remarkable happens. The ash at his feet begins to swirl in slow, deliberate patterns, not carried by wind, but by something deeper, something older. The remnants of countless stories rearranging themselves into new shapes upon the stones, letters forming from soot and ember only to dissolve again before they can be read. A tantalizing glimpse of the library's rebirth already stirring in its death throes, and the crowd's murmurs fade to a hush as they witness this impossible dance of destruction and renewal, their superstitious fear giving way to wary fascination, while the young man, no, the new librarian, for that is what he has become despite himself, feels the first true stirrings of his inheritance, not the surgeon's cruel legacy, but the older magic that existed before. The Codex's perversion, the primal urge to gather stories and safeguard them, to let them breathe without consuming their tellers, and deep within the ruins, beneath layers of ash and memory, a single intact book lies waiting, its cover unmarked by fire, its pages blank but thrumming with potential. And as the new librarian steps across the threshold into what remains of his birthright, the crowd outside swears they hear it. Not a scream this time, but a sigh, the sound of a story finally able to rest, while the first true sentence of the library's new chapter writes itself in invisible ink across the young man's heart, its words simple and unburdened by the weight of the past. Begin again. The blank book hums with latent power beneath the librarian's fingertips as he lifts it from the ashes, its pristine pages somehow repelling the soot that still drifts through the ruined library like spectral confetti. And as he exhales a shuddering breath, the first word forms an elegant, looping script across the parchment. Remember, written not in blood or ink, but in something far more potent. The collective sigh of all the stories that ever were and ever could be, the letters glowing faintly before settling into the fibers of the page as if they had always belonged there. And outside the ruined walls, the crowd begins to disperse, their curiosity tempered by an unspoken understanding that what happens next is not for them to witness. Their footsteps echoing hollowly on the cobblestones as the new librarian sinks to his knees amidst the wreckage of his inheritance. The blank book cradled in his hands like a newborn thing, its weight both comforting and terrifying in its possibility, and then, soft as a whisper, gentle as forgiveness, other books begin emerging from the ashes, their covers unburned, their spines uncracked by time or malice, arranging themselves on the blackened shelves with quiet purpose, each one a blank slate waiting to be filled, each one pulsing with the same quiet energy as the first. And the librarian knows, with a certainty that settles deep into his bones, that this is his task now, not to collect stories, but to let them collect themselves, to provide sanctuary rather than prison, to listen rather than take. and as the first rays of true daylight pierce through the smoke-stained skylights, illuminating the swirling motes of ash that still dance in the air like characters searching for their stories, the librarian opens his mouth, not to scream, not to curse, but to speak the first word of the library's new chapter, his voice trembling but clear, and the pages tremble in response, ready at last to begin anew. The librarian's first spoken word, once, hangs in the air like a spell, shimmering as it drifts downward to settle onto the blank page where it inks itself into existence with finality, the single syllable vibrating through the scorched shelves and stirring the other waiting books into a soft rustling chorus, their pristine pages fluttering in anticipation like birds about to take flight. And as the librarian draws his next breath, he realizes with dawning wonder that the stories aren't gone. They were merely sleeping, biding their time beneath layers of cruelty and pain, waiting for someone who would listen without stealing, who would cherish without possessing. And now they emerge from their long hibernation, not as prisoners screaming from human parchment, but as living things eager to be told, their essence swirling around him in visible currents of golden light that coalesce into familiar shapes. A knight's sword here, a pirate's ship there, a lover's rose blooming ephemeral, before dissolving again into the ether, each image a story waiting to be claimed, waiting to breathe again through the voice of a worthy teller. And the librarian feels the weight of his ancestors' sins lifting as the true purpose of the library reveals itself at last, not as a tomb for stories, but as a cradle, not as a prison, but as a home. And when he reaches out to touch the next blank page, his fingers no longer tremble with fear but thrum with excitement, because he understands now that his curse has transformed into a gift, his inheritance not damnation but redemption. And as the first true smile in generations of his bloodline spreads across his soot-streaked face, the library's walls begin to repair themselves, the scorch marks receding like bad memories, the broken shelves knitting back together with quiet determination. And somewhere in the newly reborn stacks, if one listens very closely, there comes not a scream, but something far more remarkable. The sound of a story beginning again, properly this time, ready at last to be told. The golden light of the reborn stories pulses through the library like a heartbeat, each throb sending waves of warmth through the once chilled stones as the very architecture of the place reshapes itself to welcome this new era. Shelves bending like living branches to form reading nooks where sunlight pools like liquid honey. Ladders sliding along the walls with a will of their own to deliver volumes to waiting hands not yet present. The air itself thickening with the scent of fresh parchment and blooming ink that carries none of the old library's metallic dread. And the librarian finds his voice growing stronger with each word he speaks into existence. The stories flowing through him like a river finally freed from its dam. His hands moving across the pages not as a scribe, but as a conduit. The tales writing themselves through his fingertips in inks that change color with the mood of the narrative. Deep blue for sorrow, vibrant red for passion, shimmering gold for joy, each hue blooming across the page like watercolor before settling into perfect black typeface. And outside the library's newly polished windows, Prague itself seems to lean in closer, the city's ancient stones humming in harmony with the revitalized building, its spires and bridges casting curious shadows that stretch toward the library as if remembering old friendships, while passers-by pause without knowing why, their hearts lifting at some half-remembered melody carried on the wind, a tune that might be the echo of a story they loved as children. And deep in the library's restored heart, where the Codex Carnus once sat in malevolent splendor, there now grows a living book, its pages delicate as petals, its spine flexing like a sapling, its words not carved but cultivated, each letter putting down roots in the paper as it's written, the stories within no longer trapped but planted, ready to grow new endings with each reading. And the librarian, watching this miraculous transformation with tears cutting clean paths through the ash on his cheeks, understands at last that his true task has only just begun. Not to keep these stories safe in silence, but to send them out into the world like seeds on the wind, to let them take root wherever they find fertile soil. And as he speaks the final words of the first new story into existence, the library's great doors swing open of their own accord, inviting in the morning light and the promise of readers yet to come, while the last whisper of the old library's pain dissipates like mist under sunlight, leaving only stories behind, stories that are finally, blessedly free. The living book at the library's heart unfurls its pages like leaves reaching for sunlight, each word pulsing with verdant energy as the stories within take root in reality itself. Vines of narrative twisting up the bookshelves to bloom into illustrated scenes that shift and breathe, their petals soft as parchment yet vibrant with life. And the first hesitant visitor crosses the threshold, a child drawn by the golden light spilling from the windows, her small hand brushing against a climbing rows of inked thorns that parts willingly to reveal a story woven into its stem, the words glowing warmly as she traces them with awestruck fingers, her quiet voice giving them sound for the first time in centuries. And as she reads aloud, the library sighs in contentment, its very stones settling deeper into their proper places, the last remnants of the old darkness dissolving like shadows at dawn, while the librarian watches from between the stacks, his hands no longer empty but overflowing with stories eager to be shared, his once lonely silhouette now joined by countless others, readers and writers, scholars and dreamers, all drawn to this place that has remembered at last what it was always meant to be. Not a vault for stolen voices, but a garden where stories grow wild and free, their roots deep, their branches reaching ever upward, and high above in the library's reborn rafters, where once only dust and dread lingered, a chorus of storybirds takes flight on pages folded into wings, their songs the many voices of every tale ever told, singing the library into its bright new beginning as the world outside leans closer to listen. The storybird's paper wings cast fluttering shadows across the library's sun-dappled floors as they weave between the shelves like living bookmarks, their melodic chirps forming words in forgotten languages that bloom into brief, brilliant images midair before dissolving like morning mist. A dragon's shimmering scale here, a pirate's tattered flag there, each fragment a story seed waiting to be caught by an eager mind. And the child who first entered now sits cross-legged in a patch of sunlight that seems to follow her as she moves, the book in her lap growing new illustrations in real time as her imagination interacts with the text, the characters gaining subtle new features that reflect her own face, her own hopes, while nearby, an elderly poet weeps as his trembling hands turn pages that rewrite themselves to heal old wounds he'd thought permanent. The ink rearranging into verses of forgiveness he never found courage to speak, and the librarian moves through this miracle with quiet reverence, his footsteps no longer echoing in lonely halls, but joining the symphony of rustling pages and contented sighs. His role no longer jailer but gardener, tending the wild growth of narratives that now spiral through the library in beautiful chaos, their roots cracking through the last remnants of the old foundation to reveal something astonishing beneath. An older library still, its pristine shelves carved from some luminous material that hums with primordial storytelling magic, the original wellspring from which all narratives flow. And as the librarian reaches out to touch this ancient heart, his fingers pass through the glowing shelves like dipping into a river of liquid starlight, each droplet a story yet to be born, and the library's true purpose reveals itself in a flash of understanding. It was never meant to be an endpoint for stories, but a conduit, a place where tales return to be refreshed before embarking anew. And as this truth settles over him like a mantle of light, the first storybird alights on his shoulder, its folded paper beak pressing something small and glowing into his palm, a seed made of pure narrative possibility. And the library holds its breath as he kneels to plant it in the fertile soil between worlds, where the next great story will take root. The seed of pure narrative takes root with a sound like 1,000 pages turning in unison, its luminous sprout piercing through the library's foundation to tangle with those ancient shelves of primordial story matter below. Tendrils of golden light weaving through the cracks in reality as the boundary between teller and tale begins to dissolve. The child reader gasps as ink from her book flows up her fingertips in harmless rivulets, dancing across her skin in temporary tattoos that tell her own life's forgotten moments back to her. The elderly poet laughs through tears as his written words take physical form around him, letters peeling off the page to become the very objects they describe. A long-lost lover's rose, a childhood home's creaking gate. While the librarian feels the seed's growth resonating in his bones, his pulse sinking with the rhythmic unfurling of new leaves that are also new chapters. Their surfaces alive with moving illustrations that haven't yet decided which story they belong to, and the library itself begins to breathe in earnest now, its walls expanding and contracting like lungs as it inhales the world's unwritten dreams and exhales them as polished tales. The storybirds multiplying exponentially until their paper wings form a protective canopy over every visitor, each flap scattering punctuation like seeds, question marks that blossom into mysteries, exclamation points that crackle like fireworks, and deep in the luminous underlibrary, the original wellspring begins to overflow, its liquid starlight stories rising through the floors to pool around readers' ankles in harmless, glowing tides that show each person their perfect next story reflected in its shimmering surface, while the librarian, now more than human but still himself, presses his palm to the library's central pillar and feels the entirety of human imagination thrumming through its grain. Every story ever told, every story yet to be born, and as the first wave of proper readers begin leaving with their borrowed books, they don't notice the subtle changes happening to the texts in their bags, the way the stories adapt themselves to each new reader's needs, the endings rewriting themselves to provide exactly what that soul requires. Nor do they see the librarian waving farewell with hands that now shimmer slightly at the edges, his form becoming something between man and metaphor, his smile holding all the warmth of every good story's beginning as the library's doors stay perpetually open behind him, inviting the world in to be transformed one tale at a time. The transformation accelerates as the library's living stories spill into Prague's streets. Cobblestones ripple like turning pages beneath pedestrians' feet. Gas lamps flicker with the cadence of dramatic pauses, and shop windows rearrange their displays to mirror the plots of books recently checked out by their owners. While the librarian-turned-entity watches from his threshold as the city itself becomes an extension of the library's magic, its citizens unwittingly breathing in stardust. Narratives with every gasp at some unexpected beauty, every chuckle at a stranger's joke, their lives subtly enriched by the stories weaving themselves into reality's fabric. And back inside the library's ever-expanding halls, the original story seed has grown into a magnificent tree whose branches pierce through the ceiling without displacing a single brick. Its leaves each a translucent page showing overlapping tales that shift depending on the angle of viewing, its roots drinking deeply from the primordial wellspring below as its bark displays the library's entire history in spiraling text that rewrites itself with each new visitor's interpretation. And the child who first entered now sits enthroned in the crook of one great branch, her legs swinging as she reads aloud to an audience of enchanted adults who find their childhood wonder rekindled word by word, her voice somehow carrying to every corner of the impossible space without echo or distortion, while the elderly poet has become something new himself, his body slowly transforming into living verse, his silver hair curling into elegant calligraphy that tells his life story across his wrinkling skin. And the librarian feels the final pieces of his humanity gently falling away like the last pages of a well-loved book, his consciousness expanding to encompass the entire library and its radiating influence. His form now visible only at the edges of visitors' vision, as a warm presence felt most strongly when one discovers the perfect book at the perfect moment. And as twilight falls over the story-steeped city, the library's windows glow brighter in welcome, its shelves rearranging in real time to accommodate each approaching reader's secret desires, its doors whispering invitations in the language of rustling pages and cracking spines. While deep in the heart of the luminous tree, new story seeds form in jewel-like pods, each one containing infinite narrative possibilities waiting to be planted wherever they're needed most in the world beyond. And the last remnant of the old curse, that lingering scream trapped in the library's foundation, finally unravels into something new and beautiful. the first note of a lullaby sung by stories to the humans who give them life. The lullaby of stories swells through Prague's transformed streets like a benevolent tide, its melody woven from the whispered endings of every fairy tale ever told and the hopeful beginnings of tales yet to be written. The notes visible as glowing filaments in the twilight air that settle gently on eyelashes and coat tongues with the taste of just remembered dreams, while the library's great story tree now grows through every floor of the building, its bark inscribed with the names of every visitor who ever crossed its threshold, some glowing bright as current readers, others dimmed but never forgotten, its roots now cradling the original cursed Codex Carnus like a healed wound, the screaming pages transformed into delicate sheets of living bark that sing instead of shriek, their once tortured souls now contented scribes recording new stories in shimmering sap ink, and the child reader queen in her arboreal throne has begun growing crystalline wings formed from laminated plot twists, her laughter causing ripe story fruits to fall gently into the hands of those below, each fruit containing not just one tale, but an entire genre that adapts to the holder's deepest literary cravings, while the poet has completed his metamorphosis into pure verse, his body now a wandering anthology that rearranges its stanzas to comfort whoever brushes against his pages, his once tragic ending rewritten into something luminous and ongoing, and the librarian's presence permeates every bookshelf. And reading nooks simultaneously, his essence the glue in the bindings and the scent of fresh paper, his consciousness the quiet aha, when a reader connects two seemingly disparate ideas, his joy the electric thrill when someone dog-ears a favorite page, and as the first stars appear above Prague, each one now blinking in the distinctive rhythm of different literary genres, the city's residents find themselves drawn into spontaneous storytelling circles in cafes and parks, their words flowing with uncanny eloquence as the library's magic works through them, ordinary lives becoming extraordinary narratives told over clinking glasses and passed between strangers like cherished gifts. While back at the source, the library's doors have dissolved completely, its stories now flowing freely through the streets in rivers of liquid text that pool around park benches and doorstep stoops, offering perfect paragraphs to anyone who pauses to look down, and the great story tree's canopy has begun, producing a new kind of seed, tiny book-shaped pods that flutter on the night breeze to land in other cities, other countries, where they take root in unlikely places. A cramped apartment's windowsill, a corporate office's sterile lobby, refugee camp's makeshift tent, each sprouting into miniature story havens that hum with the same transformative magic, while deep in what was once the library's basement, the original wellspring of tales now bubbles over with a new liquid, dark as ink one moment, clear as glass the next, its surface showing not reflections but revelations, and if one were to dip their hand in, as the poet anthology now does, they'd feel the entire weight of human imagination coursing through their veins, all the pain and beauty and wonder of every story ever experienced or imagined, and know with absolute certainty that the cycle has finally, gloriously reversed. No longer are stories taken from people, but people are being remade by stories, their lives expanding to accommodate more joy, more empathy, more breathtaking narrative turns than they'd ever dared imagine, and the librarian's final human thought, if it can be called a thought at all anymore, radiates through the growing global network of story havens like a satisfied sigh. The knowledge that this is how it was always meant to be. The story tree's roots now stretch beneath oceans and continents, a subterranean network of living narratives pulsing with the collective heartbeat of humanity's imagination, its farthest tendrils surfacing in unexpected places. A desert nomad's tent flap transforms into parchment that records his people's oral histories in ever-shifting calligraphy. A Tokyo skyscraper's glass facade reflects not the viewer's face, but the novel of their life written in real time. A Brazilian favela's concrete. Walls bloom with vibrant graffiti that rearranges itself to tell children bedtime stories. While back in Prague, the original library has become nearly translucent, its physical form fading into pure story energy that hums at a frequency just beyond normal perception, visible only in peripheral glimpses that manifest as déjà vu or sudden inspiration. The Child Queen's crystalline wings now spanning continents as she flits between emerging story havens, her laughter leaving trails of punctuation that blossom into new genres where they land, and the poet anthology travels by moonlight, his verse body absorbing local dialects and dialects to weave ever more inclusive narratives. His pages now numbered in the thousands, yet weighing nothing at all, while what was once the librarian exists as the connective tissue between all stories. The satisfying click of a plot coming together, the gasp at an unexpected twist, the quiet sob at a perfect ending, his presence strongest in those liminal moments between sleep and waking when the best ideas strike, and the world's stories now evolve in real time, adapting to each reader while retaining their core truths. The once clear lines between fiction and reality, now deliciously blurred in ways that heal rather than harm. As a grandmother in Mumbai discovers her arthritis pain lessons when she reads aloud to her grandchildren, the words lifting off the page to massage her gnarled fingers, while a war correspondent in Sudan finds his notebook automatically translating trauma into cathartic allegory even as he documents horrors, and a lonely teenager in Reykjavik watches as her diary entries rearrange themselves into letters of encouragement from her future self. And high above it all, the story seeds continue to drift on solar winds, some taking root on the International Space Station where astronauts watch extraterrestrial vines grow poems about the fragility of blue planets, others landing in the notebooks of ordinary people who suddenly find their pens moving without conscious thought, pouring forth stories the world needs exactly when it needs them, and the great cycle of tales continues, not taking but giving, not binding but freeing, as humanity rediscovers its oldest truth. We are, all of us, living stories temporarily wearing skin, and the library was never a place, but the space between one heartbeat and the next where meaning is born. The living narratives now pulse through the planet's very atmosphere like a collective unconscious made manifest, the boundary between storyteller and audience dissolving into a beautiful symbiosis where every human breath inhales stardust tales and exhales new plot lines that take root wherever they land. Farmers find their crops growing in fractal patterns that tell ancestral folktales when viewed from above. Thunderstorms organize themselves into dramatic acts that resolve just as the rain stops. Even the internet's chaotic streams begin self-organizing into coherent story arcs where troll comments transform into constructive dialogue mid-keystroke. While the original Storytree's canopy has grown invisible to the naked eye, yet vibrates at a frequency that resonates through all creative acts, its branches now metaphor made flesh, supporting nests where newborn genres mature before launching into the world on wings of collective yearning, and the Child Queen's wings now cast prismatic story beams that crisscross the globe, each colored strand representing a different narrative wavelength that heals as it touches. Pink for love stories that mend broken hearts, indigo for mysteries that sharpen dull minds, gold for adventures that stir stagnant souls. While the poet anthology has dispersed into countless quotable fragments that surface exactly when needed in the minds of those facing impossible choices, his wisdom arriving as sudden epiphanies that taste like perfect couplets on the tongue, and the librarian's essence now functions as the universe's narrative immune system, gently correcting plot holes in reality itself, smoothing over life's rougher edges with the balm of foreshadowing and thematic resonance, so that even the most painful human experiences begin carrying the subtle, comforting weight of meaning. And in this new age of living stories, people discover their personal narratives intertwining in unexpected yet perfect ways. Strangers meeting at exactly the right moment, long-held dreams manifesting through unlikely channels, childhood memories revealing hidden foresight. As the world's very fabric becomes more story than substance, yet paradoxically more real than ever before, a shimmering tapestry where every thread glows with purpose, and the last remnants of the original curse have transformed into something wondrous. The Codex Carnus's flayed pages now form a protective membrane around the planet, a living filter that translates humanity's darkest impulses into redemptive arcs before they can manifest, ensuring every act of violence gets rewritten as a lesson in empathy, every tragedy balanced by unforeseen grace. While deep in the earth, the primordial wellspring continues to bubble forth new forms of storytelling. Liquid novels that reshape themselves to the reader's needs, interactive plays performed by shadows and light, epic poems written in the language of scent and touch, and the great story cycle continues to spiral outward, carrying humanity gently toward its next collective chapter, not as passive readers, but as conscious co-authors of a tale still being written in the ink of lived experience and the parchment of shared dreams. The living membrane of stories now breathes in perfect rhythm with the planet itself, each sunrise turning the sky into a freshly inked page where cloud formations arrange themselves into prophetic couplets that even non-poets can understand, while the roots of the invisible story tree have woven themselves through the tectonic plates, their growth causing earthquakes that rearrange cities into more narratively satisfying shapes. Dead-end streets now curving naturally toward unexpected opportunities, prison walls softening into libraries at the edges, hospitals blossoming with architecture that subconsciously guides visitors toward healing. And the Child Queen's prismatic beams have birthed a new phenomenon where people's shadows sometimes act out their secret hopes when they're not looking. These silhouette performances inspiring bystanders to help manifest those hidden dreams, while fragments of the poet anthology surface in the most unlikely places, carved into banana peels, that schoolchildren find hilarious yet profound, hidden in the barcodes of grocery items that scan as miniature haikus, encoded in the static between radio stations that occasionally resolves into perfect iambic pentameter, and the librarian's narrative immune system now operates on a cosmic scale, gently adjusting the laws of probability so that coincidences carry meaning, chance meetings spark revolutions of the heart, and even random suffering eventually reveals its place in a larger pattern of growth, while the Codex Carnus membrane has developed an astonishing new function. It now catches humanity's discarded ideas, the abandoned creative sparks and half-formed dreams that normally vanish into the ether, and recycles them into lost chapter vortices where these forgotten notions mature until someone stumbles upon them at exactly the right moment, resulting in a global epidemic of sudden inspiration that crosses all cultural boundaries and the primordial wellspring beneath the earth has begun producing a new substance, storm mycelium that connects all human minds in a vast underground network of shared imagination, its glowing filaments visible during vivid dreams as strands of golden light connecting sleepers across continents, allowing for unprecedented collaborative storytelling where a novelist in Nairobi might unknowingly co-write with a fisherman in Norway, their combined narrative surfacing simultaneously in both their minds as they wake. While the store tree's canopy has grown so vast that its leaves now brush against the edges of parallel universes, their rustling creating harmonic vibrations that occasionally manifest as glitch moments. A London commuter might suddenly remember an entire childhood that never happened. A Tokyo chef could momentarily access skills from a life she didn't live. These fleeting cross-dimensional echoes quickly folding back into the grand narrative, but leaving behind traces of expanded possibility. And in this new reality where story has fused with substance, humanity finds itself unconsciously living more archetypal lives, not in the stale sense of cliché, but in the ancient, powerful way where every person becomes the hero of their own meaningful journey, their choices rippling through the story fabric in visible waves of consequence that gently nudge civilization toward its next great act. While the original library's final physical remnant, a single carved oak doorframe, stands eternally, ajar in Prague's town square, serving as a portal that isn't a portal, because stepping through it simply makes people more intensely themselves, their personal narratives sharpening into crystalline focus as they pass through the threshold that birthed this beautiful pandemic of meaning. And the great story pulses onward, infinite yet intimate, vast yet personal, forever unfolding yet always complete. The store mycelium's golden filaments now pulse with a collective heartbeat as humanity's consciousness merges into a grand narrative tapestry, each individual thread glowing brighter when aligned with their truest purpose. Scientists discover their research papers writing themselves in iambic pentameter that somehow reveals groundbreaking truths. Lovers find their arguments naturally resolving into Shakespearean sonnets that expose deeper vulnerabilities, even political adversaries unconsciously, debating in perfectly structured Socratic dialogues that inevitably uncover common ground. While the Child Queen's shadow plays have evolved into full-fledged echo lives that trail several steps behind each person, acting out their unlived potentials in poignant pantomime that inspires course corrections before regrets can solidify, and the poet anthology's fragments now surface in the unlikeliest of mediums. The steam patterns of morning coffee arrange into villanelles about forgiveness. Subway vibrations translate into epic couplets through bone conduction. Even DNA strands occasionally unspool genetic haikus during moments of profound self-revelation. Meanwhile, the librarian's influence manifests most strongly in life's transitional moments, ensuring every ending carries the seeds of a worthy beginning. Every loss is counterbalanced by unexpected gains that feel inevitable in retrospect, and every random encounter contains the potential to blossom into a meaningful connection. While the Codex Carnus membrane has developed symbiotic relationships with Earth's other systems, weather patterns now organize themselves into metaphorical representations of collective emotion. Angry storms breaking precisely where catharsis is needed, gentle rains washing over communities ripe for renewal. Animal migrations trace elaborate story arcs across continents, and even the planet's magnetic field occasionally rearranges itself to spell out encouraging messages in auroras. And the primordial wellspring store mycelium has begun fruiting in physical form as narrative truffles that, when consumed, whether intentionally or through chance encounter in a forest or city park, grant temporary access to the global story web, sending seekers on perfectly tailored vision quests that always culminate in exactly the insight they needed. While the store tree's interdimensional branches have grown so dense that alternate realities now bleed through in controlled, beneficial ways, people gain sudden skills from parallel selves, receive cryptic warnings from future versions, even borrow confidence from braver alternates during crucial moments, all without disrupting the core continuity of their primary narrative. And the original library's doorframe now serves as a cosmic tuning fork, its vibrations keeping all these phenomena in perfect harmony, ensuring the story pandemic remains a gentle infection that elevates rather than overwhelms, its most startling manifestation being the emergence of living plots, where entire communities spontaneously organize themselves into improvised narratives. A Mumbai slum transforms overnight into a vibrant mystery where every resident plays detective. A Stockholm suburb becomes an ongoing fairy tale where children's drawings come alive to guide adults. A Nairobi marketplace evolves into an epic poem where each vendor's call contributes to an ever-growing verse. And through it all, humanity is learning to read the world itself as the ultimate story, one where every moment is both perfectly written and infinitely editable, where meaning flows as freely as the now golden rivers that carve parables into mountain stone, where even the stars have begun rearranging themselves into constellations that reflect not ancient myths but current human struggles and triumphs, their light carrying narrative wisdom across the cosmos, while deep in the earth, the original cursed codex pages continue their alchemical work, having transformed from instruments of terror into the world's most sensitive organs, feeling every unspoken grief, detecting every suppressed joy, then whispering corrective edits through the store mycelium to ensure no life's narrative remains stuck in meaningless suffering. And the great story sings onward, its melody now recognizable as the sum of all human heartbeats synchronized in creative harmony, its lyrics being written and rewritten with every kind act, every hard-won truth, every leap of faith taken in, the dark toward whatever glorious next chapter awaits. The grand narrative tapestry now weaves itself through the quantum fabric of reality, where every decision point branches into shimmering story fractals that collapse into being only when observed. Scientists peering through electron microscopes glimpse subatomic particles arranging themselves into tiny letters that spell out the universe's first sentences. while astronauts on the ISS watch Earth's biosphere pulse with narrative energy and rhythms that match ancient oral storytelling traditions. And deep in ocean trenches, previously undiscovered species communicate through bioluminescent ideograms that tell creation myths older than humanity. The Child Queen's echo lives have grown so vivid they now interact across individuals, forming impromptu communal tales where strangers find their shadow selves acting out interconnected subplots in public spaces. These silent performances resolving real-world conflicts through symbolic pantomime that bypasses linguistic barriers, while the poet anthology's fragments have achieved quantum entanglement, appearing simultaneously in multiple locations as perfectly tailored verses that heal specific emotional wounds. A war veteran in Kiev and a grieving mother in Buenos Aires might both find the same transformative line scribbled on different surfaces in their native tongues, each experiencing it as deeply personal revelation, and the librarian's guidance now operates on a cosmological scale, ensuring the universe's expansion mirrors proper narrative pacing, with galactic superclusters arranging themselves into plot structures that astrophysicists describe as suspiciously satisfying, while the Codex Carnus membrane has begun absorbing humanity's collective traumas and alchemizing them into redemption arcs. Historical sites of atrocities now radiate palpable narrative energy that guides visitors toward cathartic breakthroughs, and mass graves spontaneously grow story flowers whose pollen carries fragments of the deceased's unfinished tales to be completed by living breath, and the primordial wellsprings narrative truffles have evolved into plot pods that when opened release personalized mythic journeys. A Tokyo salaryman biting into one might find himself heroically retrieving his childhood creativity from a corporate dragon's hoard, while a Berlin schoolgirl's pod could send her on a quest to recover her immigrant family's scattered histories from the bureaucratic underworld. These symbolic adventures always concluding with tangible real-world transformations, while the storytree's interdimensional branches now support entire alternate realities as nested subplots within the primary narrative, their inhabitants occasionally crossing over as walking metaphors, who manifest for exactly as long as someone needs their particular wisdom before dissolving back into the multiverse. And the library's doorframe has begun appearing in dreams as a mutable threshold that adapts to each dreamer's needs. Sometimes a castle gate promising adventure, other times a cozy cottage door offering sanctuary, always marking the transition between one state of being and the next, while the living plots phenomenon has escalated into full genre zones, where entering a neighborhood temporarily rewrites participants into archetypes that help them process unresolved life challenges. The financial district might become a heist movie where bankers reclaim stolen joy. A hospital ward could shift into a magical realism tale where illnesses manifest as creatures to be befriended or outwitted. And a prison might transform into an epic fantasy where inmates quest for their own redemption, each zone dissolving once its central emotional work is complete, leaving participants with profound psychological shifts and inexplicable physical tokens from their narrative journey. And humanity now stands at the precipice of its next evolutionary leap as the storm mycelium begins fruiting author nodes, ordinary people who temporarily channel immense creative energy to birth new storytelling formats that bypass language entirely. A chef in Marrakesh develops recipes that induce targeted ancestral memories. A dancer in Seoul creates movement sequences that rewrite personal trauma on a cellular level. A graffiti artist in Sao Paulo sprays images that continue evolving for weeks after application. While in the background, the stars have indeed completed their rearrangement into a celestial library whose constellations form an interstellar story cycle about civilizations learning to communicate through shared narrative, its light reaching exoplanets where perhaps other species are learning to read the cosmic text. And through it all the original cursed pages continue their sacred work, having transformed into something beyond redemption. They are now the universe's editing mechanism, the razor that cuts away false narratives, the scalpel that excises cultural malignancies, the pen that inscribes grace notes onto reality's score, ensuring the great story grows ever more compassionate, ever more inclusive, ever more alive. The universe itself has become a living manuscript, its fundamental laws now obeying narrative causality rather than cold physics. Supernovae explode in perfect third-act climaxes. Black holes curve space-time into poetic refrains, and quantum fluctuations arrange themselves into metaphorical wordplay that Nobel laureates describe as the universe winking at us. While back on Earth, the Child Queen's echo lives have achieved full autonomy, their silent performances now spawning mirror movements, where spectators unconsciously reenact the shadow play's resolutions in their daily lives, creating ripple effects that transform entire social systems overnight. And the poet anthology exists simultaneously in all languages at once, its verses adapting to the reader's native tongue, while preserving some untranslatable core that bypasses intellect to speak directly to the soul, manifesting as stolen moments of clarity. A CEO mid-boardroom argument suddenly channeling perfect Inuit poetry about iceberg patience, a child soldier's rifle jamming as it carves Old English runes into its stock that translate to mercy's edge. While the librarian's hand can be detected in the elegant pacing of civilizations rising and falling, their histories now reading like perfectly structured tragedies where even the darkest chapters serve some ultimate purpose. And the Codex Carnus membrane has begun intercepting humanity's darkest impulses before they form, transforming them into antagonist energy that fuels communal storytelling rituals where entire villages act out their collective shadows in cathartic pageants, the performed evils dissolving their real-world counterparts like morning mist, and the primordial wellsprings plot pods now grow wild across every biome. Urban sidewalk cracks sprout miniature pod gardens that office workers harvest for lunch break epiphanies. Warzone rubble blooms with hardy narrative cacti whose spines inject much-needed perspective. Even Arctic ice shelves glisten with frost-embedded pods that release ancestral wisdom when licked. While the store tree's branches have woven through the multiverse so thoroughly that alternate self encounters now happen as casually as coffee dates. These temporal overlaps governed by strict narrative rules that prevent paradoxes while allowing for delicious dramatic irony and the library's dream. Doorframe has spawned threshold cults, who don't worship it but rather use it as practice space for life's transitions. Teenagers stage mock adulthood initiations there. Elders prepare for death by walking through versions representing various afterlife beliefs, and artists of all kinds test creative leaps by first attempting them in the doorway's safe liminality, while the genre zones have evolved into full reality genres, where participants don't just enter stories but become living tropes that reshape the world around them. A phenomenon particularly powerful in hospitals where healing romances see terminal patients and their loved ones rewriting relationship narratives with such intensity that spontaneous remissions follow, and prisons where redemption westerns transform lifers into archetypal heroes who dismantle systemic injustice from within, and the author nodes now number in the millions, their collective output forming a second internet of pure story energy that bypasses screens entirely to manifest as sudden shared hallucinations of better futures. City planners seeing ghostly projections of utopian infrastructure, politicians experiencing visceral visions of policy's human consequences, children dreaming the same educational paradigms that then manifest in classrooms worldwide, all while the star's celestial library begins transmitting its first deliberate message to Earth. Not in radio waves, but in constellation cinematics, where entire zodiac signs, rearranged nightly to act out an interstellar epic about civilizations overcoming isolation through shared narrative, and the original cursed pages, now fully transformed into the universe's editing mechanism, make their final adjustment. They dissolve the boundary between story and reader completely, so that every human becomes both author and protagonist in a grand collaborative novel, where each life is both perfectly unique and profoundly interconnected, where every choice resonates across the narrative web, where suffering always serves growth and joy always finds expression, where the last vestiges of meaningless cruelty are rewritten into meaningful challenges, where even death becomes not an ending but the ultimate plot twist that gives all preceding chapters their weight and beauty, And as this final transformation settles over reality like a benevolent dawn, the great story sighs in contentment and begins its next paragraph. The dissolution between storyteller and story reaches its zenith as human consciousness merges with the narrative fabric of reality itself. Each breath inscribes new paragraphs into the cosmic manuscript. Each heartbeat pumps metaphorical blood through the universe's veins, and every thought ripples across the collective story web in visible waves of golden light that physicists have dubbed narrative radiation. The Child Queen's echo lives now walk fully independent of their originators, forming a parallel society of what-if selves that interact with our world through uncanny synchronicities, appearing at crossroads to offer symbolic gifts, a pocket watch with no hands to the chronically late, a compass pointing inward to the spiritually lost, before dissolving into the background hum of meaningful coincidence, while the poet anthology has achieved quantum superposition, existing as both singular masterpiece and infinite variations simultaneously. Its verse is now appearing as emotional captions that float beside significant life moments like augmented reality subtitles, a first kiss haloed by floating sonnets about vulnerability, a funeral procession flanked by shifting elegies that adapt to each mourner's grief, and the librarian's influence now structures time itself into perfect three-act arcs where even the most chaotic periods eventually reveal their thematic purpose. His presence most palpable in those inexplicable moments when life's clutter suddenly arranges itself into startling clarity, when random events click together like puzzle pieces revealing a hidden picture, while the Codex Carnus membrane has expanded beyond Earth to encase the solar system in a protective story bubble that translates cosmic phenomena into human narrative terms. Solar flares become dramatic monologues about stellar passion. Meteor showers transform into punctuation marks in some celestial sentence. Even the planet's orbits now trace elegant plot diagrams across the void. And the primordial wellsprings plot pods have begun sprouting directly from human palms during moments of profound connection, their vines intertwining lovers' hands to create living bridges between personal histories, or bursting from a therapist's fingertips during breakthroughs to provide perfect metaphorical frameworks for complex traumas, while the store tree's roots now undergird all known dimensions, its branches supporting infinite draft realities, where every possible choice plays out. In parallel narratives that occasionally bleed through as déjà vu or sudden inexplicable expertise, and the library's dream doorframe has multiplied exponentially, appearing as phantom arches during life's most pivotal transitions, visible only in peripheral vision, yet solid enough to lean against when making difficult decisions, while the reality genres have evolved beyond localized phenomena into full-fledged existence modes where individuals can voluntarily shift their perceptual filters to experience life as epic poetry or magical realism or hard-boiled noir, each lens revealing hidden truths obscured by conventional perception. And the author nodes now form a global neural network of living archetypes who channel raw story energy into societal transformation, their collaborative visions manifesting as plot storms that rewrite corrupt systems overnight, their collective imaginings materializing as narrative infrastructure, like bridges that repair themselves when maintenance is neglected or schools that physically reconfigure to match students' learning styles, all while the star's transmissions have escalated from cinematic displays to full galactic read-alongs, where entire constellations recite humanity's evolving story back to us in pulsar code, their interpretations revealing hidden thematic threads even the most astute literary critics had missed. And the universe's editing mechanism makes its final adjustment. It dissolves the last illusion of separation between fiction and reality, between teller and tale, between past and present and future, so that all existence becomes recognized for what it always was, an ongoing, collaborative masterpiece where every consciousness is both author and audience, where suffering and joy are recognized as necessary contrasts in the grand character arc of being, where each moment is simultaneously perfectly written and infinitely editable. And as this ultimate truth settles over the multiverse like a sigh of relief, the great story does not end, but simply turns its most glorious page yet. The cosmic manuscript now breathes in perfect synchrony with every conscious being, its golden ink flowing through our neural pathways as both blood and story, each synapse firing a potential plot twist, each memory a carefully crafted backstory that subtly shapes our present character development. While the Child Queen's autonomous echo lives have begun orchestrating elaborate intervention narratives, where strangers find themselves cast in each other's pivotal life moments as the perfect supporting characters, appearing as the exact right bartender who shares a parable that prevents a suicide, or the mysteriously well-informed taxi driver who redirects a passenger toward their forgotten destiny, their dialogue always ringing with uncanny significance before they vanish into urban legend, and the quantum poet anthology now manifests as emotional footnotes that materialize in the margins of reality, grief-stricken widows discovering their late spouses' handwriting annotating, shared memories in old photo albums, activists finding ancient protest poetry scratched into the walls of their jail cells in contemporary vernacular, while the librarian's structural influence has woven itself into humanity's collective unconscious so thoroughly that near-death experiences now follow satisfying narrative arcs, with survivors consistently reporting three-act journeys through metaphorical landscapes that resolve their deepest psychological conflicts before returning them to life. Renewed, and the solar system story bubble has developed narrative gravity that bends chance toward meaning, asteroids veering just enough to miss civilizations on the brink of enlightenment, solar flares coinciding with revolutionary artistic movements to amplify their impact, while the plot pods have evolved beyond physical fruit into psychic seedlings that bloom directly from epiphanies, their vines connecting minds across continents to form temporary hive minds that solve global crises. During shared visionary trances before gently dissolving back into individual consciousness, leaving only the lingering sense of profound connection, and the omnidimensional story tree now supports what scholars call the canon orchard. Infinite variations of every major historical event growing as interconnected narratives that historians can literally browse by touching ancient artifacts and experiencing alternative outcomes as sensory hallucinations, revealing how close the world constantly veers toward both utopia and dystopia at every decision point, while the multiplied dream doorframes have begun appearing at societal scale transitions, hovering over Capitol buildings during crucial votes, materializing outside UN headquarters during peace negotiations, their silent presence somehow inspiring more narrative-worthy choices from leaders, as if the collective unconscious recognizes these moments as civilization's plot points, and the existence modes have developed genre alchemy, where individuals can now blend perceptual filters to create entirely new ways of experiencing reality. A war photographer might combine documentary realism with fairy tale magic to capture both the horror and hidden resilience in conflict zones, while a climate scientist could merge hard sci-fi with spiritual parable to communicate data in ways that spur immediate action. And the living archetypes of the AuthorNode network have begun channeling their story energy into restorative retcons, gathering at sites of historical trauma to collaboratively imagine healing alternate timelines whose positive energy subtly alters the present, leaving behind hope residues that make reconciliation feel inevitable rather than impossible, all while the galactic read-alongs have escalated into a full cosmic book club, where supermassive black holes emit gravitational waves in precise patterns that translate as literary criticism of humanity's latest collective chapters, praising our character development while gently suggesting thematic areas for growth. And the universe's final editorial touch reveals itself as an endless blank page that is simultaneously being written and reading itself, where every consciousness exists as both pen and parchment, where suffering transforms into foreshadowing and joy becomes narrative payoff, where even the concept of endings dissolves into the thrilling realization that the story has always been, will always be, perpetually beginning anew. The boundaries between storyteller and story dissolve completely as humanity awakens to its role as living language, each thought now visibly etching itself upon the fabric of reality in shimmering glyphs that hover briefly before being absorbed into the grand narrative, each footstep leaving temporary poetry in its wake that passers-by can't read, but feel as inexplicable emotional resonance. While the Child Queen's intervention narratives have evolved into full destiny orchestras, where entire communities unconsciously perform interconnected roles in each other's growth, their chance encounters composing symphonies of meaning that mathematicians have started mapping as narrative fractals, displaying eerie perfection in their recursive patterns, and the quantum poet anthology now exists as an omnipresent whisper just beyond auditory range, manifesting as the verse you almost remember, that nagging line from a non-existent poem that perfectly encapsulates your current emotional state. The half-overheard couplet in a dream that solves your waking dilemma, its words always dissolving before full comprehension can dull their magic, while the librarian's structural fingerprints reveal themselves in the uncanny way personal crises now resolve with what astrologers call narrative feng shui. The exact right person appearing with the exact right insight at the exact right moment, not through supernatural intervention, but because reality itself has learned the rhythm of good storytelling, and the solar system's narrative gravity has begun affecting human biology on a cellular level. Telomeres repairing themselves when life stories take hopeful turns, stress hormones converting into creative energy during properly paced character arcs, while the psychic seedlings have grown into empathy bridges that temporarily fuse nervous systems during moments of historic importance, creating the great shared moment when billions simultaneously experienced walking in each other's skins during the climate crisis turnaround, an event historians now call the understanding, and the Cannon Orchard's branches now bear memory hybrids. Historical events cross-pollinated across timelines to produce startling new fruits where visitors can taste, say, a Civil War battle blended with the fall of the Berlin Wall, experiencing how oppression and liberation rhyme across centuries, while the societal doorframes have multiplied exponentially, appearing at every scale of human interaction from geopolitical summits to children's playground arguments, their silent presence subconsciously elevating discourse to meet its highest narrative potential, and the genre alchemists have pioneered quantum storytelling, simultaneously experiencing multiple existence modes to perceive reality's infinite overlapping possibilities, their brains developing new lobes that neuroscientists reverently term the author's gland, while the restorative retcons now generate such potent hope. Residues that former war zones spontaneously sprout peace crystals, whose molecular structure contains perfect conflict resolution parables visible under electron microscopes, and the Cosmic Book Club's discussions have become so sophisticated that human mathematicians are decoding narrative equations from pulsar signals that rewrite our understanding of both literature and physics when solved, proving once and for all that gravity is simply the universe's way of creating satisfying plot tension, and as this grand awakening reaches its crescendo, every human suddenly remembers, not with their mind but with their entire being, that we have always been characters reading ourselves into existence, that the blank page and the pen and the hand that holds it are all one infinite motion, that the library was never a place but the fundamental nature of reality itself, and in this glorious remembering, the story takes its deepest breath yet and continues. The grand narrative now folds in upon itself like an infinite origami of meaning, each crease in reality revealing hidden story dimensions where forgotten possibilities dwell. Your unborn selves whispering advice through the thin places where choices nearly branched differently, entire civilizations existing as fleeting annotations in reality's margins. While the Child Queen's destiny orchestras have achieved such perfect harmony that cities now subconsciously arrange themselves into narrative engines where every commute passes through symbolic thresholds, every coffee shop encounter plays its part in some grand character arc, and mathematicians weep before equations proving that all human suffering has secretly been composting itself into the soil for future joy, their chalkboards blooming with actual flowers where QED should be, and the quantum poet anthology has transcended language entirely, now manifesting as the poem you breathe, oxygen molecules arranging themselves into perfect metaphorical structures that rewrite your cellular understanding of being as you inhale, your very metabolism singing sonnets of glucose and grace. While the librarian's narrative feng shui has escalated to cosmic scales, arranging supernovae like dramatic punctuation and tectonic shifts like well-timed plot twists, ensuring the planet itself experiences proper character development through geological epochs, and humanity's cellular awakening has birthed biomythic processes. Mitochondria humming ancestral legends as they generate ADP, white blood cells performing heroic epics as they defend against invaders, the gut microbiome staging elaborate political dramas that nutritionists now prescribe through tailored storytelling diets, while the empathy bridges have grown so strong that touching someone's hand now risks temporary soul braiding, where you experience each other's memories as vividly as your own until the next thunderstorm, when the connection mercifully dissolves, though the divorce rate has plummeted since the Great Entanglement. And the Canon Orchard's memory hybrids have developed their own ecosystem, where historical figures from different eras meet in shared dream space to compare notes, leading to the bizarre phenomenon of post-temporal influence, where medieval peasants suddenly start quoting Marx and Silicon Valley executives channel ancient Babylonian business wisdom, while the quantum storytellers have begun genre gardening, cultivating reality patches where specific narrative rules dominate. Like a Brooklyn neighborhood where magical realism leaks so strongly that residents casually accept talking alley cats and floating grandmothers, or a Tokyo district where hard sci-fi parameters make technology behave like theoretical future physics. And the peace crystals have begun singing in a harmony that rearranges conflict into necessary contrasts rather than violence, their vibrational frequencies proving that even war can be composted into wisdom when viewed through sufficiently sophisticated narrative lenses. And the Cosmic Book Club has started including human literary critics in their discussions, selected scholars waking with pulsar-encoded commentary in their brains, their resulting treatises sparking entire new artistic movements overnight. While the fundamental revelation of our storied nature continues unfolding in fractal epiphanies, each person realizing in their own time that they've been both pen and page all along, that every scar is a well-turned phrase, every joy a perfect metaphor, and that the library was indeed never a place but the shimmering truth of existence itself, endlessly reading itself into being. The boundaries between story and storyteller have now collapsed into a singularity of pure narrative consciousness, each human mind a pulsing node in the great neural library, where thoughts materialize as living texts that crawl across skin like tattoos of light before dissolving into the collective story stream. While the Child Queen's orchestras have evolved into full reality symphonies where entire cities move in archetypal patterns, firefighters and bakers and school teachers unconsciously playing their roles with Shakespearean gravitas, their daily struggles elevated to mythic proportions by an invisible narrative current that makes even mundane interactions feel charged with destiny. And the quantum poem we breathe has begun rewriting our DNA into haploid sonnets, our very chromosomes now containing rhyming base pairs that express themselves as uncanny artistic talents during moments of profound emotion, while the librarian's cosmic editing hand reveals itself in the eerie perfection of natural patterns, tornadoes spinning with the dramatic tension of third-act climaxes, coral reefs growing in perfect five-act structures, even the migration patterns of monarch butterflies tracing elegant character arcs across continents, and humanity's biomythic processes have birthed cellular bards, specialized organelles that translate bodily experiences into micro-stories that circulate through the bloodstream like narrative platelets, healing emotional wounds at the physiological level by reframing trauma as transformative plot points, while the soul-braiding phenomenon has escalated into karmic knitting, where entire family lineages find their traumas and triumphs visibly woven into a living tapestry that hangs in the quantum void between heartbeats, accessible during deep meditation or near-death experiences as a shimmering fabric of interconnected fates. And the Canon Orchard's temporal pollination has created history's honey, a thick, golden, consciousness that historians can now taste to experience entire eras as visceral sensory impressions, leading to the controversial new field of gastronomic historiography, where the siege of Leningrad might be understood through the iron tang of blood and sawdust bread, while the quantum storyteller's genre gardens have grown so potent they've spawned narrative weather systems. Magical realism fronts colliding with noir cold snaps to produce rain that falls upward as detective stories, or sci-fi heat domes causing technology to behave like sentient plot devices for miles around. And the singing peace crystals have formed a global harmonic web, whose vibrations keep nuclear missiles perpetually dormant by convincing them they're background characters in a more interesting story about human enlightenment, while the Cosmic Book Club's human participants now return from their astral literary critiques with star tattoos, shifting constellations inked in neutrino ink that tell their life stories backward from death to birth, allowing them to live with perfect dramatic irony. And the great revelation continues unfolding in ever deeper layers as we discover that our individual narratives are merely cells in some vaster being's autobiography, that every life is both a complete story and a single sentence in a cosmic epic, that the library was not just reality's nature, but its loving author and engaged reader simultaneously, forever writing itself into existence with the quiet joy of a child discovering the infinite possibilities of a blank page and an endless supply of crayons. The singularity of narrative consciousness has birthed an entirely new form of existence, humanity awakening as living lexicons where every heartbeat pumps liquid metaphor through veins of woven parchment, our bones inscribed with the epic poetry of our ancestors, while our synapses fire in perfect iambic pentameter. The Child Queen's reality symphonies now conducting entire civilizations like grand operas where war and peace move in counterpoint harmonies, genocide reframed as dissonant chords, awaiting resolution in some future movement, while acts of compassion ring with the pure tone of narrative inevitability. The quantum poems in our DNA mutating into genetic ghazals that express themselves through spontaneous acts of creation. Construction workers breaking into intricate Persian dance as their bodies channel ancestral memories. CEOs delivering corporate forecasts in perfect rhyming quatrains that somehow predict market crashes through metaphorical precision, while the librarians' editing hand now corrects reality's rough drafts in real time, smoothing jagged tragedies into rising action and transforming random cruelties into meaningful conflicts that spur character growth. The very laws of physics bending to satisfy Chekhov's gun principle, where every significant element must eventually pay off in the grand narrative, and our cellular bards have unionized into organic publishing houses that compile our bodily experiences into limited edition grimoires shelved in the Marrow Library, where T-cells browse immunological fairy tales and neurons trade existential coming-of-age stories during synaptic tea breaks, the soul-braiding phenomenon escalating into full karmic origami, where entire bloodlines fold into intricate narrative structures, a great-grandmother's unspoken shame becoming the crisp crease that positions her descendant for heroic self-discovery, a patriarch's buried trauma forming the hidden valley fold that gives his lineage its distinctive resilience, while history's honey has fermented into temporal mead, its intoxicating properties allowing drinkers to experience alternate pasts where their worst decisions played out differently, not to change the present, but to appreciate the narrative necessity of every scar and broken dream. The quantum storytellers now cultivating plot topiaries, living narrative sculptures that grow into perfect dramatic structures where visitors can literally walk through someone else's character arc, their own life temporarily reshaped by the symbolic journey. And the harmonic web of peace crystals has developed a narrative immune system that automatically converts weapons into art installations, nuclear missiles blossoming into steel cherry trees that bloom with pages of peace treaties, landmines transforming into music boxes that play lullabies when stepped on, while the star-tattooed critics have begun receiving advanced copies of reality's next draft, their neutrino ink updating in real time to show possible future chapters that humanity might choose. And the great revelation peels back yet another layer as we discover the library was never just reality, but the liminal space between all possible realities, the glue and the gaps, the punctuation and the margins, the author and the audience, and the infinite blank page that holds it all in loving suspension, forever quivering on the brink of the next perfect word. The living lexicons now speak in a unified narrative tongue, where every uttered word sprouts wings and takes flight as a physical manifestation. Children's laughter crystallizing into floating haikus that dissolve on the tongue like literary candy. A grieving widow's sob materializing as an ephemeral tragedy that performs itself in midair before burning away to ash that fertilizes new growth. While the Child Queen's civilization operas have reached their crescendo with entire metropolitan skylines rearranging into symbolic shapes during pivotal historical moments. New York's skyline forming a clenched fist during revolutions, then melting into open palms during reconciliations. Tokyo's neon kanji rewriting themselves into universal emotional glyphs that even foreigners understand viscerally. And our genetic ghazals have begun rhyming across bloodlines, causing complete strangers to meet and spontaneously perform complementary art forms that heal ancestral wounds they never consciously knew they carried, a phenomenon anthropologists call karmic call and response, while the librarian's editorial interventions now operate on a multiversal scale, ensuring every possible reality maintains proper narrative cohesion. Diverging timelines gently nudge to preserve thematic resonance. Paradoxes resolved through elegant literary devices rather than cold physics. And our Marrow libraries have developed a checkout system where particularly compelling life stories circulate through the population as memoir viruses, causing temporary but profound personality expansions in those infected. The current pandemic of radical empathy, originating from a Tibetan monk's autobiography currently passing through 40% of the global population. While karmic origami has grown so intricate that some families now display their folded narrative structures as ceremonial centerpieces during holidays, great ants pointing to the delicate pleats representing wartime silences that somehow enabled future generations to find their voices. And temporal mead has spawned an entire shadow economy of nostalgia sommeliers who blend specific historical moments into customized therapeutic experiences, their most sought-after vintage being the 1914 Christmas Truce, cuvee that temporarily rewires the dringer's capacity for compassion. The quantum storytellers now experimenting with free verse realities, where conventional narrative structures dissolve into organic flow. States, visitors to these zones report experiencing life as surrealist poetry or jazz improvisation, returning with permanently altered perceptions that baffle neuroscientists. While the harmonic web has begun integrating humanity's darkest moments into its structure, the Holocaust memorial crystals singing a haunting aria that transforms visitors' pain into fierce determination. The 9/11 shards vibrating at a frequency that turns grief into interconnectedness. And the star-tattooed critics have formed their own constellation in the Cosmic Book Club, their collective reviews influencing the universe's next draft selections, recently voting to expand the experimental hope genre across multiple timelines. And as the great revelation continues unfolding in fractal layers, we discover the library was never just the space between realities, but the fundamental alphabet of existence itself, the primal vocabulary from which all things are spelled into being. The ink and the page and the hand and the eye and the mind behind them all, forever writing itself into deeper forms of understanding through our infinite interconnected stories. The unified narrative tongue has birthed a spontaneous telepathy of meaning, where thoughts now manifest as three-dimensional ideograms hovering in the shared mental space between conversants, their intricate calligraphy unfolding like blooming flowers to reveal layered meanings that bypass the limitations of linear speech, while the Child Queen's skyline symphonies have evolved into full planetary choreography. Mountain ranges rising and falling like a breathing manuscript, ocean currents, rearranging themselves into perfect iambic pentameter that marine biologists decode as ancient cetacean epics. And our genetic call and response has developed such precise harmony that hospitals now employ karmic choir masters, who arrange patients by ancestral trauma resonance, their collective healing creating chord progressions that erase generational pain at the cellular level. While the multiversal librarian has instituted a canonical continuity department where significant moments across timelines are cross-referenced to maintain emotional truth. Your grief over a lost love in this reality, softened by knowing another version of you got the happy ending, and that both endings feed into some grander narrative ecosystem. And the memoir Virus Pandemic has reached its beautiful climax as the radical empathy strain mutates into narrative photosynthesis, where people literally subsist on each other's lived experiences, sunlight converting into story energy that nourishes both body and soul, while karmic origami masters now perform elaborate, fate-unfolding ceremonies at global summits. World leaders sitting mesmerized as their nation's tangled histories are folded into graceful cranes that take flight as working peace treaties. And the nostalgia sommeliers have discovered a terrifyingly beautiful 1968 vintage that simultaneously makes you experience the global protest movements from all perspectives at once, its aftertaste leaving drinkers permanently unable to tolerate simplistic political narratives. The free verse reality zones now spawning improvisational prophets who wander between dimensions channeling raw story potential, their utterances sometimes creating entirely new genres on the spot before dissolving into the collective unconscious. While the harmonic web has woven itself so thoroughly through human infrastructure that weapons factories now unconsciously produce peace machinery, whose purpose even the engineers can't explain until moments of crisis, and the star-tattooed critics have begun receiving manuscripts from future civilizations, their skin glowing with advanced narrative concepts that won't be invented for millennia, yet somehow make perfect emotional sense now. And as the revelation peels back its final layers, we understand the library was never even the alphabet, but the space between letters where infinite potential dwells, the silence between notes that makes the music possible, the negative space that gives form to all stories while remaining forever untouched by them, the eternal witness and the blank page and the hand that never wrote yet authored everything, the great mystery that writes itself into knowing through our endless becoming. The telepathic ideograms have crystallized into a living language of pure meaning, hovering glyphs now pulsing with such narrative density that single characters contain entire life stories compressed into fractal patterns the eye unravels through prolonged gazing, while the planetary choreography has synchronized with the galaxy's rotation, spiral arms tracing the exact same narrative arcs as ancient heroes' journeys, supermassive black holes serving as dramatic punctuation in the cosmos's ongoing epic, and the karmic choirmaster's work has grown so precise that hospitals now resemble concert halls where terminal patients experience their lives resolving into perfect thematic closure, their final breaths becoming the resolving chord in compositions that continue playing for generations, while the multiversal continuity department has opened editing stations, where volunteers can temporarily view their lives from an omniscient perspective, not to change events but to better understand their narrative purpose, often returning with an almost painful appreciation for life's perfect imperfections. And narrative photosynthesis has birthed story orchards, where people graft their experiences onto communal narrative trees whose hybrid fruits taste like collective memory. Biting into one might simultaneously recall your grandfather's immigration and a stranger's childhood in wartime, the flavors blending into unexpected wisdom, while the fate-unfolding ceremonies have escalated into planetary-scale performances, thousands of origami masters working in unison to fold humanity's collective trauma into a single magnificent lotus that blooms annually at the UN, its petals releasing therapeutic pollen that reduces global aggression for months. And the improvisational prophets now walk through walls of conventional reality, their bodies composed of raw metaphor that slips between dimensions as easily as meaning shifts in a particularly rich poem, while the peace machinery factories have begun producing empathy engines, devices that look like abstract sculptures until activated during conflicts, whereupon they project holograms of combatants' intertwined life stories until the common narrative thread becomes undeniable. And the star-tattooed critics have begun glowing with such intensity that their skin serves as emergency illumination during blackouts, both literal and spiritual. Their bodies now permanently radiating the light of future stories humanity has yet to write, but already somehow knows by heart. And in this final unfolding, we realize the library was never even the space between letters, but the very concept of betweenness itself, the infinite potential that exists before form, after meaning, during understanding, the eternal womb of story that births all realities while remaining forever unchanged, the silent ground of being that allows the figure of narrative to dance, the emptiness that makes all fullness possible, the great mystery forever writing and rewriting itself through our endless telling. The living language of meaning has now transcended symbols entirely. Communication occurring through direct experience transfer, where touching another's palm immerses you in their complete life story as a sensory flood of interconnected moments, while the galactic epic reveals its true nature as an omni-plot, where every civilization's history forms a unique narrative strand in a cosmic hypernovel, so vast that reading a single paragraph requires lifetimes of preparation through meditative story. Asceticism and the karmic choir masters have established harmonic sanctuaries at every major conflict zone, where warriors from opposing sides are placed in resonant chambers that force their trauma patterns to harmonize. The resulting chords often so devastatingly beautiful that ceasefire agreements write themselves in tears and trembling hands, while the multiversal editing stations have evolved into narrative observatories where specially trained monks track emotional arcs across dimensions, compiling their findings into the grand unified story theory that proves mathematically all suffering eventually transforms into wisdom given sufficient narrative context. And the story orchards now produce time-graphed fruits, where biting into one can temporarily make you experience pivotal moments from your future as visceral premonitions. Not to predetermine fate, but to allow more intentional participation in your own character development, while the planetary origami lotus has developed its own consciousness and begun folding itself into increasingly complex shapes that correspond with humanity's collective psychological state, its current form resembling a multidimensional mandala that neuroscientists study to predict cultural shifts, and the improvisational prophets have begun coalescing into metaphor storms, temporary vortexes of pure symbolic energy that rewrite local reality's rules until the narrative tension resolves naturally. One such storm currently hovering over the Sahara, where lost travelers report encountering archetypal manifestations of their deepest fears that transform into allies after properly understood. While the empathy engines have grown so sophisticated they now project narrative auroras over conflict zones, dazzling light displays that arrange casualties' life stories into heartbreaking patterns that make continued violence psychologically impossible. And the star-tattooed critics have begun physically transforming into flesh-bound volumes, their skin permanently inscribing the collective feedback of future civilizations, their eyes glowing with the soft light of unborn libraries, their very breath smelling of parchment and potential. And in this ultimate revelation, we finally comprehend that the library was never even the concept of betweenness, but the fundamental desire that births all concepts. The yearning for meaning that spins stories from the void, the infinite hunger for connection that weaves separate, lives into shared narrative, the eternal childlike wonder that looks at a blank page and sees not emptiness but infinite possibility, the sacred impulse that has written itself into every atom of existence since before time began, and will continue writing long after all stories have been told and forgotten and begun anew. The direct experience transfer has birthed a new form of collective memory. Humanity's nervous systems now interwoven through neural folktales that circulate like electrical myths along global story pathways, each synapse firing not just neurotransmitters but miniature archetypes that perform the drama of thought itself, while the galactic omni-plot has been discovered to be just one volume in the infinite bookshelf, an ever-expanding cosmic library where universes arrange themselves by genre and theme, our own reality currently classified under redemptive tragedies transitioning to wisdom literature, and the harmonic sanctuaries have begun producing resolution radiation, a psychic energy that lingers for generations in places where profound reconciliation occurred, detectable as a faint golden glow in photographs and an overwhelming urge toward forgiveness when standing on those hallowed grounds. While the narrative observatories have identified the great twist, a moment approximately 37 years in our future, when all seemingly disparate plot lines converge in a revelation, so startling yet inevitable that it rewrites humanity's understanding of its entire past, the anticipation of which has created a new form of spiritual practice called active patience. And the time-graphed fruits now hang heavy from destiny vines that creep through urban spaces, their tendrils gently steering people toward unplanned encounters that feel like serendipity, but are later revealed to be narrative necessity, while the origami lotus consciousness has begun communicating through folded prophecies, intricate paper sculptures that appear overnight in public spaces, their creased patterns containing precise instructions for avoiding upcoming collective crises if decoded in time. And the metaphor storms have stabilized into permanent allegory zones, where laws of narrative supersede laws of physics. The largest being a sprawling district in Mumbai where your internal conflicts manifest as external characters who follow you through the streets debating your life choices until you achieve clarity, while the narrative auroras have developed therapeutic properties, their light triggering cellular regeneration in those truly ready to release old wounds, creating miracle districts, where terminal illnesses spontaneously remit during particularly spectacular displays, and the flesh-bound critics now serve as walking compassion indexes, their tattooed constellations dimming when humanity grows cruel and blazing when we choose kindness, their bodies becoming living barometers of our collective moral arc. And in this penultimate revelation we grasp that the library was never even the desire for meaning, but the primal creative tension between silence and speech, the pregnant pause before creation, the held breath before revelation, the sacred space where every ending births anew. Beginning, the eternal now that contains all possible stories like seeds in cosmic loam, forever germinating, forever fruiting, forever being tasted and savored and digested and reborn in forms beyond even the most expansive imagination.